Welcome to English Rise. This channel exists for people who want to improve their English while developing something deeper at the same time. Not just language skills, but perception, discipline, self-mastery. Here, English is trained through long, reflective content. Content designed to slow you down, to sharpen your listening, and to change the way you see yourself. If this kind of calm, serious English helps you grow, consider subscribing to the channel and staying with us. Now, let's begin. Part 1. Why thinking you are poor is more dangerous than being poor. There is a difference that most people never learn to see. The difference between lacking money and thinking you are poor. Lack is temporary, a situation, a phase. But the idea of being poor is an identity, and identities shape decisions. When someone believes they are poor, their mind adjusts expectations downward. They stop preparing for opportunity. They stop thinking long-term. They stop investing energy where returns are delayed. Not because they are incapable, but because the identity quietly tells them that effort will not be worth it. This belief does more damage than the absence of money ever could. Part 2. How poverty becomes a way of thinking. Poverty, at its deepest level, is not defined by numbers. It is defined by horizon. When your thinking is short-term, everything feels urgent. Bills, needs, discomfort. The future becomes abstract, almost unreal. And when the future feels unreal, sacrifice feels pointless. Why invest now for a version of life you don't fully believe in? This is how financial struggle turns into psychological confinement, not through lack of intelligence, but through narrowed vision. Part 3. Why language shapes your economic identity. The words you use internally matter more than you think. I can't afford that. That's not for people like me. Money always disappears. These phrases are not observations. They are reinforcements. Every time you repeat them, your nervous system adapts. It learns to expect limitation. And expectation influences behavior. Behavior shapes outcomes. This is not motivation. It is conditioning. Part 4. The hidden cost of thinking small. Thinking small feels safe. It reduces disappointment. It lowers risk. It protects you from hope. But safety has a price. When you think small, you don't prepare for growth. You don't build skills deeply. You don't plan with patience. You don't tolerate temporary discomfort. You optimize for survival, not expansion. Survival keeps you alive. Expansion changes your life. Part 5. Why most people confuse humility with limitation. There is nothing noble about underestimating yourself. Humility is awareness of reality. Limitation is resignation. Many people call it realism when they lower their expectations. But realism without ambition is just fear with better language. You can acknowledge where you are without deciding that this is where you belong. Never confuse acceptance of the present with agreement about the future. Part 6. The relationship between money and self-trust. Money flows toward structure, toward reliability, toward people who follow through. This is uncomfortable to hear, but important to understand. People who believe they are poor often distrust themselves. They hesitate. They delay. They doubt their own decisions. This creates instability, and instability repels opportunity. Wealth, at its core, is trust made visible. Part 7. Why thinking you are poor makes you impatient. When resources feel scarce, time feels expensive. You want fast results, immediate relief, quick wins, but most meaningful returns are slow. Skills compound, reputation compounds, discipline compounds, Impatience breaks compounding. Thinking you are poor pushes you toward urgency. Urgency destroys strategy. Part 8. The psychology of abundance is not about money. Abundance is not optimism. It is orientation. It is the ability to think beyond the next problem, to delay gratification, to invest without immediate reward. You can practice abundance long before your finances change, by how you use your time, by how you treat learning, by how you respond to difficulty. Abundance begins internally. Money follows patterns already established in behavior. Part 9. Why environment reinforces the poor identity. Your surroundings speak to you constantly. Conversations, media, expectations. If everyone around you only talks about limitation, your mind adapts, not consciously, biologically. Changing your environment is not arrogance. It is maintenance. You must protect the identity you are trying to build. Part 10. The quiet difference between need and desire. People who think they are poor often treat everything as a need. Needs feel urgent. They compress time. They demand reaction. Desire allows planning. It allows patience. Learning to distinguish the two changes decision-making. Not everything uncomfortable is an emergency. This awareness alone creates space. We are only halfway through this reflection, because the most dangerous aspect of thinking you are poor has not been addressed yet. Part 11. Why thinking you are poor damages your relationship with time. When someone believes they are poor, time stops feeling like a resource and starts feeling like a threat. Every decision becomes rushed. Every delay feels dangerous. This creates a constant state of urgency, where reflection is replaced by reaction and planning is replaced by survival thinking. In this state, people do not choose what is best. They choose what feels relieving. Short-term relief becomes the priority. Long-term construction is postponed. Over time, this damages the relationship with patience, which is one of the most valuable assets anyone can develop. A person who believes they are poor does not feel they can afford patience. And without patience, no meaningful structure can be built. Part 12. The invisible tax of constant worry. Worry is expensive, not financially, mentally. When the mind is constantly scanning for threat, it consumes energy that could be used for learning, planning, and improvement. This is the invisible tax of thinking you are poor. You pay with attention. You pay with clarity. You pay with cognitive space. Over time, worry becomes a habit. Even when conditions improve, the nervous system stays alert. This is why many people remain psychologically poor long after their finances change. The habit of worry remains. Breaking this cycle requires training calm, not just increasing income. Part 13. Why most financial advice fails poor thinking. Most financial advice focuses on tactics. Budgets, percentages, investments. These are useful, but they assume a stable internal framework. If someone believes they are poor, they will sabotage good systems through impatience, fear, or inconsistency. Advice cannot override identity. Until the internal narrative changes, external strategies remain fragile. This is why two people can follow the same advice and get completely different outcomes. Part 14. The difference between scarcity and discipline. Scarcity says, there is not enough. Discipline says, I will decide what matters. Scarcity creates anxiety. Discipline creates order. Many people think they are disciplined when they are actually anxious. They restrict not to grow, but to survive. True discipline is calm. It is intentional. It is not driven by fear. Learning this distinction changes how you relate to effort and restraint. Part 15. Why thinking you are poor makes learning feel luxurious. When someone identifies as poor, learning feels optional. Secondary. Time spent learning feels indulgent when immediate problems demand attention. But learning is not a luxury. It is leverage. Those who delay learning delay their own expansion. The irony is that the people who most need learning are often the ones who feel they cannot afford it. Breaking this pattern requires redefining learning as survival infrastructure. Part 16. How poor thinking shrinks possibility. Possibility requires imagination, and imagination requires safety. When the nervous system feels threatened, it narrows focus. You stop asking, what could be built? And start asking, what could go wrong? This is not pessimism. It is biology. To expand possibility, you must first reduce internal threat. Calm creates vision. Part 17. The role of delayed gratification in identity shift. Delayed gratification is not about denial. It is about trust. Trust that effort will return value. Trust that the future is real. People who think they are poor struggle with this trust. They have been disappointed before, so they protect themselves by consuming now. Rebuilding delayed gratification is rebuilding trust with time itself. Part 18. Why thinking you are poor makes you overvalue comfort. Comfort feels like stability when life feels unstable. Small pleasures become coping mechanisms. Distraction becomes medicine. There is nothing immoral about this, but it has consequences. When comfort becomes a priority, growth becomes negotiable. And negotiable growth rarely survives pressure. Part 19. The quiet shift from survival to construction. There is a subtle moment when survival thinking begins to loosen. You stop reacting to every impulse. You pause. You begin to think in systems instead of emergencies. This shift does not require money. It requires intention. Once construction begins, momentum builds quietly. Part 20. Why never thinking you are poor is a discipline. Never thinking you are poor does not mean denying reality. It means refusing to let circumstances define identity. You can acknowledge limitation without internalizing inferiority. This mental discipline protects long-term strategy, and long-term strategy is what changes outcomes. Part 21. The most dangerous consequence of thinking you are poor. Self-betrayal. The deepest damage of thinking you are poor is not financial. It is relational. It damages the relationship you have with yourself. When you believe you are poor, you begin to negotiate your values. Quietly, you say you will work on your skills tomorrow. You say you will take discipline seriously later. You say you will become consistent when life becomes easier. Each delay feels justified. Each compromise feels small. But over time, these compromises accumulate, and something subtle happens. You stop trusting your own word. Self-betrayal does not arrive dramatically. It arrives through small excuses that feel reasonable in the moment. And once self-trust erodes, even opportunity becomes threatening. Because opportunity demands follow-through. Part 22. Why poor thinking makes you afraid of responsibility. Responsibility is weight, and weight feels dangerous when you already feel overloaded. Thinking you are poor makes responsibility feel like risk, not empowerment. You avoid committing fully. You keep options open. You stay flexible. But flexibility without direction turns into drift. True responsibility stabilizes identity. It gives structure to effort. Avoiding responsibility keeps life ambiguous. Ambiguity feels safe, but it keeps growth suspended. This is why many people say they want change but resist structure. Part 23. The role of identity in long-term decisions. Long-term decisions are not logical choices. They are identity expressions. You invest, study, train, and sacrifice only when your identity supports it. If you see yourself as poor, long-term thinking feels unrealistic, almost arrogant. So you choose what aligns with how you see yourself, not with what could transform you. This is why changing identity must precede changing outcomes. Identity creates permission. Part 24. Why thinking you are poor makes you over-explain your life. People who feel internally poor often feel the need to justify their situation. They explain why things are hard, why now is not the right time, why they had no choice. Explanation becomes armor, but constant explanation keeps attention on limitation. Silence, on the other hand, creates space for action. You do not need to narrate every struggle. Some work must happen quietly. Part 25. The difference between having little and feeling entitled to more. Feeling poor is often confused with deserving more. Desire without preparation creates resentment. Resentment poisons effort. People who build lasting progress do not demand outcomes. They build capacity. Capacity attracts opportunity, not entitlement. Letting go of entitlement does not mean lowering standards. It means raising preparation. Part 26. How thinking you are poor affects your English learning. Language learning reveals identity faster than almost anything else. When someone thinks they are poor, they rush fluency. They want shortcuts. They want immediate results. But language requires patience, repetition, tolerance for discomfort. Poor thinking makes mistakes feel expensive. So people avoid speaking, avoid exposure, avoid practice. Abundant thinking accepts imperfection as part of the process. This is why identity matters even in learning English. Part 27. Why calm is a form of wealth. Calm allows reflection. Reflection allows strategy. Strategy allows leverage. Calm is not passivity. It is control. People who feel poor often live in mental noise. Urgency, pressure, comparison. Reducing noise is one of the first internal upgrades. Calm creates room for better decisions. Part 28. The quiet power of thinking beyond your current position. Thinking beyond your position does not mean ignoring reality. It means refusing to be confined by it. You can respect facts without worshiping them. Every meaningful transformation begins with a thought that feels slightly unrealistic at first. That discomfort is not danger. It is expansion. Part 29. Why never thinking you are poor requires daily maintenance. This mindset is not achieved once. It is practiced, daily, through how you speak to yourself, through how you plan, through how you respond to difficulty. Old identities try to return when you are tired. Maintenance is discipline. Part 30. The final internal shift before real change begins. There is a moment when you stop asking for permission. Not from others, from yourself. You stop waiting to feel ready. You stop waiting for certainty. You decide to act from who you are becoming, not from who you were. This is where thinking you are poor finally loses its grip. Never thinking you are poor is not about pretending. It is about choosing identity over circumstance. You may start with little. You may feel behind. But you are not defined by the current state of your resources. You are defined by what you consistently build, by how you think under pressure, by how you speak to yourself in silence, by how you prepare even when no one is watching. Wealth begins internally, in patience, in discipline, in self-trust. And as you continue training your English here, remember that language is not just a skill, it is a mirror. It reflects how you see yourself. If this kind of calm, deep English helps you grow, both mentally and linguistically, consider subscribing to English Rise. This channel is built for those who choose long-term mastery over shortcuts. Thank you for staying until the end. Your attention matters. We'll see you in the next episode.